All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, in the latest episode of As MLB Turns, League Commissioner Rob Manfred hinted at the possibility of divisional realignment in baseball. Now, realignment would most likely happen if MLB decides to expand to 32 teams, and all signs point in that direction. Major League Baseball has not expanded since 1998 when the Tampa Bay Rays and the Arizona Diamondbacks joined the league, which now represents the longest stretch of non expansion by the league going back to 61. Now, Portland, Salt Lake City, and Nashville are probably the most logical places for Major League Baseball to expand to, and thus Manfred is citing the possibility of geographical realignment. Manfred discussed this when he joined the booth for ESPN's coverage last night in Williamsport for the game between the New York Mets and Seattle Mariners. Manfred was quoted as saying, "I think if we expand, it provides us with an opportunity to geographically realign. I think we could save a lot of wear and tear on our players in terms of travel. And I think our postseason format would be even more appealing for entities like ESPN because you'd be playing out of the East and the West." Manfred also went on to say that 10 o'clock slot, that's a problem for us sometimes because becomes a real opportunity for our West Coast audience. Manfred also said that I think the owners realize that there's demand for Major League Baseball. We're in a lot of great cities. We have the opportunity to do something good around the expansion process. Manfred would like to see um, the expansion in place before he retires in 2029. But what is the likelihood of that? I say this because there's that potential work stoppage in 2027 that could slow everything down. And I'll tell you like this, all signs point to us either having a reduced season in 2027 or no season at all. I would be highly surprised, okay, if we get a full 162 game slate in 2027 because the owners are dug in on a salary cap and the players are dug in and not going for it, okay? So, with all of that said, getting back to the realignment aspect, would realignment for baseball mean the end of the National and American leagues? Because some people are fearing that MLB would most likely go to an East West format, kind of like what we see in the NHL and the NBA. But if MLB were truly to shift things around, and for my opinion, it would suck. Okay, and as much as it would suck, nobody should be surprised that I say this because the writing on the wall has been developing for quite some time now. You go back to 1997, the introduction of interleague play. And, don't get me wrong, interleague play, when it first came in, it was nice, it was different. It gave fans an opportunity to see things that they normally didn't see. You never saw at that point the Mets and Yankees playing regular season games against each other. The same thing can be said about the Cubs and White Sox and so many other um, regional teams from both leagues. Nonetheless, interleague play back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it went from being a 2 week affair to now this thing is taking place all season long, and it simply has lost its flavor as far as I'm concerned. On top of that, former MLB Commissioner Bud Selig getting rid of the National League and American League offices. That was something that flew under the radar, but that was big. Okay. Also doing away with umpires who just worked in either the National League or the American League, as it's all under the MLB umbrella now. The adaptation of the universal designated hitter several years ago, that was big, okay, because It took away the uniqueness, in my opinion, of playing in the National League. It also took away a lot of strategy because if you played in the National League park, you had to account for the pitcher's spot in the batting order. And on top of that, it resulted in a lot of double switches. We don't see that anymore. Okay, you think about the 2020 COVID season. We saw a shortened 60 game campaign where you only played the teams in your division and then you played the teams in your region. So NL East played AL East, NL Central played AL Central, NL West played AL West. Okay. And I think, all of these, what I'm talking about here was a brainchild of that, in my opinion, But nonetheless, you look at it right now because instead of 19 divisional games, teams are now playing 13 divisional games so that everybody can play everybody. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. That stinks. Okay, that's just my personal opinion. I feel these teams should be playing more games against the teams in their divisions. But nonetheless, the hypocrisy, in my opinion, of Rob Manfred, because he sat up there on national television and he talked about the wear and tear on the players. But what about the ridiculous travel schedules that have been put in place? Because I guarantee you, nobody from ESPN is going to push that envelope about that because they're going to continue to be chummy with the commissioner. But I'll say it. You look at it. There was a time in baseball when a National League team from the East Coast, for an example, when they went west, okay, for their West Coast swing, they start off in San Francisco against the Giants, then go to LA to meet the Dodgers, and then they finish up in San Diego with the Padres. And the same thing could be said for an NL West team going east, as they might have started in those days in Montreal with the Expos before going to New York with the Mets, or going to either face Philadelphia or even going to Pittsburgh to take on the Pirates. Okay, but now we've got schedules that are created by MLB where a team might start a road trip in Seattle with the Mariners, then go to St. Louis to face the Cardinals, and then finish up in Phoenix with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Whose fault is that? That's Major League Baseball's fault. So Rob Manfred should not sit up there and complain about the wear and tear for the players. Just like it is in any other sport, these commissioners and these team owners really don't care about the players. Okay. Do we really need interleague play all season long? I've said it before and I will say it again. Absolutely not. Okay. I feel like it cheapens things. And I'm going to touch on that in a minute. I have long been saying this, and I'm going to say it now even more. More games within your division against the divisional opponents where it matters, and more games against the teams in your league. I don't know about anybody else, okay? But I would rather much see an American League series between the Yankees and the Tigers than watch an interleague series between the Twins and Marlins. Okay, especially the way that the Tigers are playing right now, especially the way that the Yankees are playing right now. That could be a potential playoff preview right there. All right. Now, if MLB does decide to go with the geographical concept, and if they're talking about it, it's a possibility. Okay, but nonetheless, in my opinion, I see a train wreck waiting to happen. Okay, because are you going to sit up there if you're Major League Baseball, and are you going to put all of your heavy hitters like the Mets, Yankees, Phillies, and Red Sox in the same division? And I say this because three of those teams that I just mentioned, they're at the top of payroll, spending in baseball, along with the Dodgers. So what's going to happen? Are you going to have a division for all of the teams that don't want to spend money? That's just my thought right there. The realignment talk, for what it's worth, I feel like it falls in line with the bulk of the owners who are pushing for the salary cap, because this is going to be another reason, in my opinion, another excuse for them not to spend. Now, year by year, okay, more and more of the purity of baseball is going to continue to leave us, and it is. Okay, the National League dates back to the late 1800s, the American League at the beginning of the 1900s. But in those days, there weren't any teams west of the Mississippi. Okay, and the postseason format has completely changed. Okay, in those days, even throughout the bulk of the 1960s, it was the American League and it was the National League. There were no divisions. You won your league, you went on to the World Series. That was it. So there wasn't a lot of travel for the postseason. The divisional play didn't come into play until 1969. And even with that said, you had two postseason rounds, the LCS and then the World Series. So again, travel wasn't big. Now, and I could see where they're coming from this aspect. You've added more to your postseason now. Okay, now you have a wild card round, you have the divisional round, you have the LCS, and then of course you have the World Series. A situation like the Dodgers last year, and it didn't slow the Dodgers down. Clearly, okay, they were in the Big Apple for the NLCS against the Mets, and then they came right back to the Big Apple for the World Series with the New York Yankees. Did it slow the Dodgers down? Absolutely not. It's just one of those things where, listen, you're going to have West Coast teams play in the postseason. You're going to have East Coast teams play in the World Series or in the postseason for that matter. I guarantee you, okay, if you get Phillies Dodgers in the postseason or you get Giants Mets in the postseason, all right, those fans from both of those fan bases, they're going to watch those games. Okay, fans on the East Coast have been staying up and watching MLB playoff games for years. Fans on the East Coast have been staying up watching Stanley Cup playoff games, NBA playoff games for years. So again, Rob Manfred, in my opinion, just flat out simply needs to cut the crap. Okay, it's one of those where now that MLB has expanded, their postseason multiple times, and there could be more on the horizon if they go to 32 teams. But Rob Manfred, for what it's worth, he's going to take the bulk of the public outcry on this, and that's his job as commissioner to protect the owners, the guys who pay him. All right, but nonetheless, this is their brainchild, the team owners. All right, around MLB, not Rob Manfred, as well as a television network like ESPN. Because if you remember, Manfred talked glowingly of ESPN last night. ESPN didn't push the envelope with him, nor will they, because they're in bed with each other. And ESPN, they can call themselves a worldwide leader in sports, this, that, or the third. All they want to do is have sports on their platforms. They don't care in what form, and they can give what as far as tradition, because I don't care what anybody says. There needs to be a documentary with how ESPN, in my opinion, has helped to destroy tradition and regional rivalries in college football for coast to coast conferences. That's just my 2 cents right there. Okay, but nonetheless, why not, with Major League Baseball, why not just go back to the East West divisional aspects in both leagues? And when I say that, if you're going to go 32, you have an 8-team AL West, an 8-team AL East, 8-team NL East, and an 8-team NL West. And then you would have 84 divisional games. So that means, you have 7 opponents in your division. You play each of them 12 times. Okay. Then the AL East would play the AL West 66 times, vice versa. Cut down on this interleague crap. Let's have them just play 12 interleague games a year. Call it a day. That's not going to happen. Okay, because what I'm talking about is hypothetical here, because at the end of the day, MLB is chasing dollars. All right. What is the likelihood that MLB will continue to tinker with the sauce? I think the likelihood is extremely high, because Major League Baseball a couple of years ago realized that they had a problem as far as bringing in the youth. And of course, popularity is coming back to the game of baseball. And baseball knew that they were losing some ground to the likes of MLB, pardon me, the NBA and the NFL. And you're not going to catch the NFL. The NFL is a runaway freight train when it comes to popularity right now. But nonetheless, I think Major League Baseball is going to continue to tinker with the sauce at all costs. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the interleague play all season long. I don't want to see Dodgers Yankees every year during the regular season. I want to make it something special in the World Series should these two iconic franchises meet there. kind of like how it was, once upon a time. Yes, it was still special to see Dodgers Yankees in the World Series last year, but to me, I think it would have been a little bit different if we had not been seeing them face each other so much in the regular season. Just my 2 cents there. But getting back to the man of the hour, if you will, Rob Manfred. Okay, this is just going to be another spot on his legacy, whether you want to call it a positive spot or a negative spot. I'll leave it up to you. But you think about some of the things that have gone down on Rob Manfred's watch, the ghost runner, the pitch clock. I mean, some people are in favor of the pitch clock, some people aren't. You know, having to face at least three guys coming out of the bullpen, the oversaturation of the analytics, and of course, the A's leaving Oakland are just some of the biggest things that have gone down on his watch. I'll tell you like this: if Rob Manfred wanted to get people talking about Major League Baseball, he got them talking about Major League Baseball right now, because there are some people who don't want to see the Mets and Yankees in the same division. There's some people who don't want to see the Cubs and White Sox in the same division, or the Angels and the Dodgers. And I'm sure there are people who do want to see them in the same division. But nonetheless, it's one of those where Major League Baseball is just a microcosm of sports right now. And the problem is, in my opinion, you have different people running things. You have business people running things as opposed to sports people. And you know what? They can really care less about tradition. And unfortunately, if Rob Manfred is willing to go on national television and talk about this publicly, that means there's a very good possibility for it to happen, and I think it's going to stink. Major League Baseball, they're going to push for expansion. They're going to push for the salary cap. After the CBA is up, after the end of next year. But nonetheless, my thing is this, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again: how about we have a floor for the spending in baseball? And how about you go after the teams that don't even try to win? Because, like I have said before, just because you are in a small market does not mean that you can't go out there and compete. Look at what the Milwaukee Brewers are doing this year. Look at what the Tampa Bay Rays have done for quite some time. The same can be said for the likes of the Oakland Athletics. But then on the flip side, you have organizations like the Pittsburgh Pirates who haven't tried for nearly a decade. Okay, and I think that is a bigger issue in baseball that needs to be addressed, as opposed to going out there and with realignment and really screwing things up. This is a topic, like I said, that's not going to go away. I, like you, am going to stay tuned. I'm not a fan of Rob Manfred, but again, like I said, Rob Manfred works for the owners. So let's just see what's next, and let's see what's coming up for them to mess up. Just my 2 thoughts there. But folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, I want to take this time out to let you know, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you can hit that like button, as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. And the same goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can check us out at Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.